Let me know if you can see that. So we're going to start off with some save the dates. So follow up for the IGA for financial staff administrators and transition specialists is either June 24th from 8 to 10 or June 28th from 3:30 to 5. So email will be sent out to remind people, but if you want to give a heads up to your staff at your school. So the financial person, whoever that financial person was who was in on negotiation, should be there, transition specialists and administrators. So you have two choices of times. It may not take an hour and a half, and Michelle Markle, who is on this call, will be running those and talking about how you spend money, how, if you want to say anything, Michelle, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, sure. So this is just, we just finished all of our new biennium contracts. You can't see my face, I'm in the sun, sorry. And I let everybody know that we'll have like a kickoff to get into more detail, but these are changes to the contract. We learned more about what is and isn't an allowable expense, and that will be, you know, impactful for some of you. So I'm going to have just more clear guidance on that, and then share some updated forms around verification of time and a new fiscal report. So it's kind of like all the geeky stuff, but it's good for transition specialists to be there just to really hear about the allowable and non-allowable expenses, because what's new is that if I get an invoice, we're going to be collecting expense reports with them for the first time in a really long time. And if there are expenses on there that are not allowable, I have to reject them and send them back. None of us wants that to happen. So it would be great if everybody could attend one or the other or watch the recording and just over communicate on the, you know, on the side of caution. So that's all. Please share those dates. We'll share them multiple times, and see you in June.
Thanks, Michelle. And save the date. Summer Academy is online. It will be July 20th through 23rd. That's 4 days. We don't know exactly. We're still working on content, and we will give you more information as we get a little clearer, but save those dates, leave them open. And we hope to do as good a job as we did at the conference, as you would, you know, so we have new exciting ideas to share with you all also. So please put that on your calendar. And the new site, new staff training is August 16th.
And that will be just 1 day, and it will be virtual. Just found out that we can't hold anything at the university like we have done in the past. We can't have anything there until fall. So it will be online. It will be 1 day, probably a long Zoom day. And that you see new site, new staff. I bet, oh my gosh, there's a lot of you that we look at 4 years and newer for new staff. So if you're a new transition specialist within the last 4 years, this would be a training you would go to.
So thank you. So at the conference, actually, Mary Jo and I did this presentation. So, and we had an hour and 20 minutes to do it. So we cut some things, and we're going to see how we do with that. And so the topic is teaching post-secondary options to transition students. And I'm Terry from U of O, Technical Assistance, and Mary Jo and I are going to be talking about this today. And
Terry, can I say, I would really encourage you guys, if you have questions, speak up about them. You know, it's great to write in the chat and do that, or if you just want to write in and say, I have a quick question, go ahead and do that, because, you know, again, like Terry said, we have this, it's already recorded, but I want to get drilled down a little bit more. If you guys have more specific questions, we will condense this, and we should be able to answer them.
Right. So understanding what the options are out there for your students and accessing those programs. And so what are some of the options out there for your students transitioning out of high school who need further training to achieve their goals. And then we're also going to talk about how to teach post-secondary education options to your students with the focus. We are focusing on community colleges, what it means, steps to making the right decisions based on a student's preference, interests, needs, and skills. And so a general overview of what some of the post-secondary options are, focusing again on community college, what you need to know to teach students about community colleges in general, and then specifically the community college nearest to you, right? And here we have visit community college, visit all of these things. Of course, this year it's been virtual. I expect that to change. And I am an optimist, but I think we all can feel it in the air. And we want to set our students up for success. And we want to educate them all with an eye to the future. So whether a student wants to get training today, or maybe in 3 years, we want them to know what their options are. I mean, I wish when I was young, someone told me about Job Corps, because I might have gone to Job Corps and become a carpenter first, just to, so educating students about what's out there is really important. So what do we mean when we say post-secondary education options? What are some of the things that students will tell you are their post-secondary options?
Go ahead, shout it out.
YouTube star.
Oh,
Trade schools and Job Corps.
Trade schools, Job Corps, sitting on the couch playing video games.
That's what comes after when you have not planned and set goals appropriately while you're still in high school. And that's the last thing we want to happen to kids.
Tech programs at community colleges.
Mhm.
Military.
Mhm.
Apprenticeships.
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 JT,
What was
Jake-
that, Sarah Lynn?
on the job training.
Oh, okay.
OJT. I missed the O.
I did too.
Sorry.
That's okay. On the job training, yep.
Yep.
So there are a lot of, so one of the things that we want to talk about is what are the degree options that are out there for students, right? So community colleges offer certificates. And you can get a certificate that's 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. What does the community college in your area, what are the areas of study that you can get those 3, 6, and 12 month certificates in? That's important to know and to educate your students on. And then just talking about the different degrees that, okay, you can go to college and get a certificate, but you can go and get an associate degree. What's an associate degree? What's an AA? What's an AS? What's a BA? What's a BS? Telling your students, I would say to students, I got a BS. Do you know why? And he is a BA. It depends on your major in college, but educating students about what those degrees are and what they mean is really a fun thing to do with students, because even though students may tell their friend they're going to college, or they're telling you they're going to college, do they know what it means, right? They'll say college, but they went talking through this whole degrees with students is a really fun activity because they soak it in. And it gives them knowledge to talk to their peers. And then they really do know what they mean when they say they're going to college. Because I've been in IEPs and kids don't always know what they want to do. So I'm going to college. All my friends are going to college. So this, knowledge is power, and it empowers students to go out and find out more about these things.
I remember kids coming into our class and we were like, okay, tell us what that means, post-secondary education, what are the degrees and all of that, and they all, very few understood it and got the whole picture. And then I had one student who said, yeah, then when I could join the conversation with my other friends, and realized, he came back and said it and said, I realized they didn't know what they were talking about. They said they were going to college, but then I started saying, well, are you going to get an AA? Are you going to get a BS? Are you going to get this? And it was, that kid felt he had power because he knew what it was, and realized that he wasn't the only one in the school that really, of a lot of kids don't know what all those things mean. So it's kind of a fun thing.
Right. And there are so many other options too. Not only college, there's Job Corps, there's apprenticeships, beauty school. And don't forget community college classes for skill enhancement through community education programs, because as we know, as we're mirroring the population, all our students don't have the ability to go on and be successful at college necessarily and get a degree, but they all have this desire. Many of them have a desire to continue learning and finding out what opportunities are for all your students that you work with, not only the students who can or are capable of getting a AA or a BA or a BS, but some of your students who want to learn more about photography or baking or cooking, and find out there's also community colleges that offer enhancement classes that will get you up to be able to take credit classes. So learning about what's out there is really important if you're going to teach your students about the opportunities in your community. And some of these, if they apply, maybe FAFSA is available. Many beauty schools, yes, FAFSA is available. Some of them are not. So help your students figure out what some of these trainings are. CNA, often you can get a kid a free CNA if they agree to work at an institution for a few months. So phlebotomy, you're not going to have FAFSA. So just knowing what's available to kids and presenting them with all these options, because 3-6 months training, if you can get 3 or 6 months training and make $40,000 a year, that's not a bad thing, right?
Yeah. Terry, there's a good question here. Gail, it's going to come up. We're going to talk about FAFSA in a little bit. So remind me if I don't remember to go back to your question, because it's a great question.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thanks, Gail.
Okay.
Really familiar. I think Southern Oregon does a lot with forklift. There's a forklift education thing. There's different ones like that. And like Terry said, especially with CNA now, they're so desperate for people. A lot of the care facilities, if you do the course through them, if there's no charge, and you commit to working at that place afterwards in most cases. But there are some free options for that out there. So, look around for those.
And then we go back to, okay, these are the options. And then what are your interests? Do you want to stay involved in those interests during your post-secondary training? Maybe is your interest something you could go into and learn about and make money doing? Do you want or need further training? What is your support system outside of high school? What kinds of help will you need to figure out how to pay for post-secondary training? So those are all important questions to help your students decide what it is they want to do. Do I know what I want to major in or what I want to do after the training? What kinds of environments do I learn best, and what kind of accommodations will be helpful for me? So the accommodations is a big piece also that we'll talk a little bit about today, but I worked with a teacher who, what she did junior year in the IEP was took all the kids' accommodations and printed them out on a sheet for each student at the IEP and gave it to the student with the idea that that student would go to one teacher who they felt most comfortable with the case manager, and practice asking for their accommodations. And for your students who are going on to college, that's a really important piece because that's the way that you do it at the college level. You don't have someone offering you all the accommodations that you get having an IEP. So however you can help students answer these questions, explore these questions for themselves, is really a way of ensuring their success, I think.
Mhm.
Um,
Oh, we're here already, Terry.
So this, Mary Jo is going to show you some Lane Community College, a particular website, and talk about that. And
Can you stop sharing?
I got to stop sharing. That's what I'm trying to do. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay. I want to share. Whoops. Where's my thing?
I hate it when that happens, Mary Jo.
I know, it's the 2 monitor thing. I get one on one and then I do
Lose-
that.
Yep.
And there it is right there. Okay, you got the community college thing up?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. So I did it with, we went through, and I think it's probably because I'm most familiar with Lane Community College. I actually worked there for, I don't know how many years, as a academic advisor in the TRIO program. And then I was around the college a lot when I worked with international students that attended the community college. So, and we're helping with them with choosing their classes and doing all that. So come from a little bit of experience from the community, working at a community college for a while. They're mostly set up. Some are good websites, some aren't that the best, which we all know is the case. LCC is pretty good. It was pretty fun to go through it and look. You know, you get in here, you get to your future students and, you know, looking for information, enroll now, doing that. And they go into, you know, what you need to enroll and getting that excuse me, getting that information. And what I loved about the LCC one is they really ask, what's your goal? What do you want to do? So these are things that we're doing, you know, that we do as transition specialists is, you know, what's your goal? What do you want to do there? You know, I want to get an internship credit. I might want to get college credit in high school. Those are options. I'm not sure what I want to do. Take a class because, you know, I want to learn how to weld and that would be a good thing to do. So there's they have some great things there. Looking back, then we go down to, you know, okay, let's look at that. Let's explore this. And these are all things that, you know, we talk about how to teach this. How do we get this information to students? And, you know, a huge way to do this is look at it as a scavenger hunt. You know, let's find what's in the LCC, in this community college website. What's out there? What is there? What do they offer? What does it all mean? And get in depth so kids really have to search through and find things. We click here. LCC has some great things. I go in here and, you know, you look, there's 8 different things that they put their groupings in for career exploration. Those of you that have been around a while, and I know there's a few, I recognize some of you from so many years ago, remember the old CAM days, the old Sim and CAM days. And with CAM, it was the 8 different groupings, right? We had the 8 different groups: arts and business and computer, hospitality, social sciences, natural resources, trades, and health and medical fields. Those are still there from our old CAM days years ago. That was when my kids were in high school back in the beginning of the 2000s. So it's kind of cool. I like that because I was a very huge supporter of CAM. I thought there was a lot of benefit to CAM, and especially for kids in special education. It gives a real focus. Because I love the idea of kids going into the trades and all of that, I'm gonna click on that one. And look at all of this that LCC offers within the trades. And like Terry was talking before, there's the AA degree. You can get an AA in these. You can also get a 1-year certificate. You can also get a short-term 15 to 20 credits or something certificate, depending on what you want. I look at, I think it was manufacturing technology. I'm gonna go back and look at that. You know, so we're looking in here, what does all that mean? And this has a lot. What's kind of cool is, you know, you look at this one and then how much do they make? I don't want to do that. I think you hover over it and it tells you how much you make. Manufacturing, oh, I guess they don't on this one. Sorry. I've looked at so many of the different at so many of their different sites. Oh, it does. You hover over it and it says kind of the average, typically what people typically make. You know, you look over here and manufacturing guide, and this one comes up to $19.73 an hour. So it's kind of cool, and kids want to see that. What am I going to make in it? So this is coming back into an AA program. And in an AA program, it's usually 2 years. You have to have, in most AA programs, now I'm going back to my old advising days, it's usually 90 credits at least to get an AA. So you look at that, and that's 2 years. For 2 years is hard, and if you know you're at it 100%, you're probably not working, doing another job. You are focused 100% on that program that you're in. The students I worked with, and I'm sure many that you worked with also, that's a pretty tough load. You know, to go full time, that averages out to about 15 credits per term, 3 terms in a year. And some of these, as you look down here at the program requirements, can be pretty intense and a lot of time, especially when you get down here to these core programs. You are in the welding shop, the manufacturing area that they have at the community college. You're in there spending a lot of hours. So it's a really tough thing to think, okay, you're going to get this done in 2 years, boom, and you're done. So think about that with your students. As with all of this, you know the students you work with well. Could they be successful in that? Could they handle it? Are they going to class every day? Are they on time? Are they able to get homework done? All those things that you need to make sure that your student can handle it. With that comes a lot of other things. There's the prerequisites, right? So you look at math and you look at this, and down here, the first thing that comes up is prerequisite, math 60 or math 75. In order to get into math 85, applied geometry for technicians. Well, okay, did your student do a placement test and get into pass out of math 60 or 75? If they didn't, if they placed down at math 20, they're going to have to take these classes here. So you really have to look at that big picture and where your student is. And we're going to talk a little bit later about placement tests and the value of placement tests. A lot of schools are now saying, oh, let's look at your transcript and see where you are and what you got in there. And that from high school, did you get past Algebra 2? Okay, let's put you in. If that student struggled and maybe had modifications for Algebra 2 and and really barely squeaked by, you don't want to set them up for failure by just saying, okay, they made it past Algebra 2, which should qualify them for Math 85, and they'd probably get a waiver, be able to get in and get released to do it. But are they going to be successful in that? If math has been super, super hard, did they really struggle with grasping fractions and decimals and all the other math things that I failed miserably at while I was in school. So those are things you really have to look at. So it's not like, here you go, Terry, here's the classes you're going to have to take for this program in manufacturing technology. And it's going to be 2 years and da 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 da. Well, it might in fact be 3 years. It might even be 4 years. So keep that in mind. Looking at prerequisites is very important. You get into an AA degree, you've got to have a few more human relations classes. You've got to take this writing class up here. They want you to have some computer science classes down here. So, you know, there's all those other things, and all of those come with prerequisites. All of them come with you knowing your student and knowing exactly where they are. The exciting part, I think, in the trades is they then have, this one is 18 credits. Okay, could be a term, could be manufacturing tech 1, CPC, the learning outcomes, it's cheaper, what kind of jobs you can get. Looks like it's really focusing on the whole thing on manufacturing. Safety in the shop measurement coordinates, metal cutting basics. So a student would have some of those basic things for an entry-level job. So I think that's really exciting. What a great way, you know, if a student wants to get in and just get a little bit of an education. The same thing then comes through with this manufacturing tech 2. So that one ends up with 36 credits. So doubled the credits, and it's a little bit more expensive, but they get a little bit more in-depth training. A lot of times you could do probably the one, and then there's some overlap courses and, you know, be able to get through. The most important thing is talk to an advisor. You can go with the student to the community college and sit down and talk with an academic advisor. And I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do that. Students have to advocate for themselves, but you want to make sure they understand everything that was said. A good academic advisor will sit and map out all the classes that you're going to have to take and in what order and the prerequisites. They'll know all of that. So any questions on that? Those kinds of things there? I'm not looking at the chat, Terry, so you'd have to tell me.
Okay, let me look at the chat.
Going back, the one thing that is also great, a lot of schools have what's called career pathways, and you'll see them in the medical fields. They're short-term training periods, and I like this because there's an interest to learn about, and it, yeah, goes, oh, I'm sorry, that just is questioning the career pathways. I wanted to go down here, short-term certificates. What's cool about this that I really liked, and I never knew LCC did it, and I don't know about other community colleges. I haven't had time to go and see if they do, but they really kind of break it down. And what's great is they have this Model A entry level. And this would be for a lot of our students who struggle with school but want some kind of a certificate. So they have some certification for a certain job. So entry-level jobs within a certain career field. And it goes down and it really talks about that. Okay, these are the Model B are a little bit more involved, a little bit more rigor to the classes. But it doesn't mean it's out of, it's not possible, it's not achievable. It's going to be a little bit harder, but with some work, students can get to it. Here's a great one, front-end web development, Model A. So that's for groups who, school's a little bit more difficult. In the computer fields, again, we're going back through these 8 career communities. This is always a great one, students who really want to do culinary. And this is for students who, school might be a little bit more difficult. It's a 1-year certificate that you can go through. It's not that expensive. Again, there's the very basic math, which is math 25 is fractions and very basic beginning math, which you need to have in culinary. But then what's pretty exciting, I think, here is the rest of the course. You're jumping in and really getting into the baking and pastry part. And if that's their goal, what a wonderful thing to go through for them. So, lost my, put this in the wrong way here. It comes back and so those are great courses to look at. Early childhood teacher's aid, what a wonderful training for a student. So these are all things to look at, different careers that you may never have known about, that the student may not have ever known about. So any questions on that at all?
Yeah, and what I really like is you could take a 12 credit class and see how you do and then go on, because you're still getting a certificate in some area, and letting students investigate that and see for themselves and find something that they don't know a lot of this exists, right? And then if you're going to get an AA degree, that's 93 credits. That's a lot. So just looking at the different options is really powerful for kids, and letting them see what it's really like.
Yeah.
The idea versus the reality, as we say, right?
The last thing you want to do is set a student up for failure. You want to make sure that they're ready. They're not going to jump in and fail miserably, that they know what they're doing and are getting the supports and help they need from you.
Right. And how do you get into a community college? You apply online. You can help students do that as a group. If you have a group who are doing it, I say here, take placement tests if required or needed. And I'll go into more detail about that. Smarter Balance can count for your, instead of taking a placement test now. But having students figure out what their skills are compared to what the college wants their skills to be is about what the placement part of the test is. And then helping students register for accessible education or disability resources, depending on what the college that they're going to calls it. So placement tests. This is help encourage students to take placement tests for the community college. Some community colleges are no longer requiring it. And one of the things I tried to do was have students take the placement test junior year, because if their reading came out a little lower than what they wanted it to be, they could take high school classes to supplement instead of paying for it. And also, if they take it junior year, they know what their reading and writing skills are. And the other thing is everybody who's here should register and take an AccuPlacer test. Register for your community college, take the test yourself, because you can then tell the students, okay, that was 20 questions of reading and writing. So we can study for this test together. And you taking it yourself is really helpful for students. So
Especially math. I think the math is really helpful too.
Right.
So
but empowering kids, because most of them say I test poorly, right? So you can say, this is 20 questions. We can study for it, and you'll know what the questions look like. And you can take all the time you want in the world, because also some of the students I worked with, after they answered 2 and they realized they couldn't do it, they'd start checking the boxes. And you really don't want them to do that. You want them to become competent if they want to go on. One of the things that we did on state testing day, seniors didn't have to test. So we would offer the community college test, offer other things that seniors wanted, and offer it to the whole school and make sure our students were part of that. And as I said, study for the placement test together as part of a class or with a group of kids, and focus on the placement part, not the test part, because it really is really good for students to know where they sit. And it's really great for families to know. So what are some of the barriers for students going to community college? It's all I call it paperwork, really, it's all online now, but it's all those forms, it's timelines, it's having, FAFSA you do in October, and it's also knowing what they want to do, right? So first they got to know what they want to do, and then their senior year, they have a lot of work to do. So having an advocate, either a parent, you as a transition specialist, you have a career center staff, make sure your kids know who the staff are and they work with them. Bring them into your class or into wherever you're working with students. The more relationships they have and the more people they have on their team, the more likely they are to succeed, because the idea is you're passing them off to the next. If there's a trio at the community college, get them involved in whatever you can so you pass your students off to a successful transition. And then the understanding the disability so they can talk about what their accommodations are. That's another really important piece. So next we're
You
gonna
should be able to walk in there and just go, the disability services person says, how can we help you? Why are you here? Why are you applying? And sometimes that's all they'll say. It'll be, they've got to be able to say, I struggle with listening and taking notes at the same time. I need a quiet place to take a test, or I'm so distracted. The student has to be able to verbalize that. So they have to totally understand the accommodations they're getting in high school and know how that will apply to college, and what their needs are. And it can't come from you. It can't come from their parents. The student has got to be able to advocate for themselves.
articulate. So quickly, we're going to go through the documentation. This is from Blue Mountain Community College. I just grabbed it from their website, and what a student needs to do. The request for accommodations, you can do it all online, or you could do it on a PDF. You consent to share information, again, online, PDF. And then there's this disability documentation requirement. So if you click that, this is what you see. I don't expect you to read it. I just want you to see, this is what a student sees. They go, oh, I don't need disability resources, right? Because look at all of this. I have to do all this. Well, it is about having documentation, current documentation, but they need an advocate or someone to help with this process, right? And the school has all this information to share, and hopefully it's current. And it's very overwhelming for a young person to add this onto their plate, and it is a huge barrier. So, educate your students early and often about this and get them ready for being able to do it. And a lot of this stuff you can do online with a student and sit down. It's getting the paperwork to follow through and make that appointment. And so advocate for them so that they can advocate for themselves. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of that today. We're going to quickly go into just talking a little bit about differences between high school and college accommodations.
Terry, I want to go back to a couple of these. We really didn't go into the FAFSA part, so I want to do that. Sarah Lynn has a great question. Having access to the placement tests available is an issue in rural areas without close by community colleges. Not all are using AccuPlacer. Some use the Compass, and yeah,
Right.
there's different tests. It's been very frustrating to get options for my kids and to take placement tests. Is there anything YTP can do? Sarah Lynn, I would say call the head of testing at your community college and talk to them and just say, hey, this is where we are. We're out in Enterprise, and we need to, I want to see if the kids, they are interested in coming to your college. They go to Blue Mountain out there. Is that the closest one?
Treasure Valley or Blue Mountain, but
Okay.
both have been very difficult to
So another
even-
thing that
and
I
they
would-
want to proctor them and they don't give the kids much time. It's just been a
Right.
train wreck to try to get done.
So Sarah Lynn, one thing I would recommend, because Lane Community College has been so successful with that, they let people proctor the tests. We proctored for, oh my God, I was doing it for probably 8 years, something like that, Terry. We got it going at Lane. And I mean, I knew the placement test person, so I could approach her that way, which helped a lot. But I would say call the person, I don't know who it is now there, but call the person at Lane Community College and have them talk to you about how they do it in Lane County. Have
Okay.
that testing person go to another testing person at a college that's doing it, and just talk to them about it. The values,
Yeah.
I mean, Terry and I could go down a list. We did it junior year, so kids knew where they were. It was an assessment for SPED teachers, writing IEPs. Then we did it again their senior year, at the very beginning of their senior year, to see how they were doing. And then if the scores still weren't good, maybe they did it again in April of their senior year, if they weren't where they wanted to be, the placement into the classes they wanted. You really get a pulse on where that student is.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been trying to get set up, and they've gone from allowing people in the high schools to proctor to not allowing them. It's just very different. So I will contact, I mean, I might just be able to do AccuPlacers through Lane. I mean, it still gives the kid and the teachers a way to, I mean, we don't have any other way to touch base on what they need to take their senior year, or, do they need to take a class, online their senior year, like some of those Math 25s or whatever. And it's
Yep.
just really hard to do advising when you don't have community colleges that are connected.
I had a kid who wanted to go to Bend, and he took the LCC test, and we called the college and they said they would take AccuPlacer. They gave Compass. So finding some, and that's the other thing, know who your testing people are, who your accessible education disability resource people are. And I think, Sarah Lynn, if you can find a way to get one of those community colleges to work with you, to train you, to give you the test, they'll take one. If they don't do Compass, they'll take AccuPlacer. That's what I found. I don't know if that's true, but it was with the kid I was working with. So
Yeah, it was. Well,
yeah, so
I want to go back to Gail's question here on getting financial aid, primarily grants, which now remember, FAFSA is our grants, and grants don't have to be paid back, but also through FAFSA, you can get qualified for loans. And you really want to watch that, because it's a click of a button that a student is going to all of a sudden have these loans and be eligible for those loans. And that can be a whole other can of worms. That would be a whole nother topic for us, of some of the horrible things I've seen with kids getting so far in debt because they dropped out or they did whatever. So a student whose parents won't supply tax info, that's probably one of the most frustrating thing for me. A kid who's motivated and really wants to go on and really wants to get further education. And one of the things that I did was sometimes the student, if they weren't living with their parents, a lot of times they were with their grandparents, but you still had that requirement, trying to get the student to be oh, what's it called, Terry? Where they're, because you have to have the parents' taxes through 26.
Right. The only way you can get around that is if you're considered independent of your parents. Sometimes homeless students, we would have get some verification, but if they're living with their parents and you can't get financial information, I don't know if there's a great solution to that. I really
Has
don't.
anybody had any luck with that at all? I know I struggled with it. I'd get them, if you could get them on McKinney-Vento, being homeless, even if they're couch surfing at another friend's house or something, you could, then that could get waived.
Right, but you have to go through.
Oh yeah, 24. I'm sorry, Pam, that's, I said 26, 24. Thank you for correcting me. It's a tough one, and it can be just really sad. The other thing, go to your community college's financial aid office and just say, this is what's going on. Do you have any ideas, anything I can do? So,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
I was most interested like in Oregon Promise, the Promise Grant, but that requires FAFSA also. And I did some Googling and they said you can talk to the community colleges directly, but they may give you a waiver and give you loans, but I'm looking for the
Right.
free money,
Totally. Yeah. So really investigate and see what the student situation is. If they're living home with their parents, it's a tough one. If they're with a grandparent or they're staying at a friend's or they're doing something else, there are some ways around that one.
If they're emancipated in any way, they're eligible, as well as if their parents are not claiming them on their taxes. So that's part of the independent piece. So if you can prove that they're not dependent on taxes, they will take that.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah Lynn.
That's
true.
the word, emancipated. I couldn't think of it. You're right.
That's
Thank you. Takes a village.
So I want to just go through the very end, and it's kind of the same in anything. This is, I think, where we got to last week too, at the very end. There's those differences between high school and college. That there's and you need to have the parents understand this and the students understand this. The schools identify the students when they're in public school. It's the college, when they go to college, it's the student's responsibility to identify, go to disability resources and talk to them and look for help. No one's going to seek them out. High schools, of course, you guys all know we have IDEA. Colleges do not have IDEA. That goes away, but ADA comes in. And there are some guidelines they have to follow for that law. IDEA is about success and ADA is about access. So if you can remember that. In high school, you've got an IEP or a 504. School provides those evaluations. We do our eligibilities and all of that every 3 years. Documentation determining whether the student is eligible for services in high school. At the college level, they're not sufficient. Documentation, guidelines, information needed for each category of the disability. So that goes back into being all that stuff that was in small print that Terry had up. What do you need for that? Student must get evaluation at their own expense. If they need to have some other testing or anything, they have to pay for it. High school, again, the school, the students identified by the school and is supported by the parents. The school's responsible for arranging the accommodations, and the teachers approach you if they believe you need assistance. And then in college, obviously, it gets to be the opposite. You got to self-identify for disability resources. Self-advocating, arranging accommodations, all of those things belongs to the student. And like, even in high schools, you're going to have office hours, right? Teachers are going to have office hours. That'll happen also at a higher education. but the students got to have the courage, the confidence, all of those things to go up and knock on that door and walk in and say, this is what's going on in this class. I'm struggling with this. Can you help me with it? Parents cannot access, at high school can access records, and the parent can advocate for the student. Once you're out, once you're in higher education, the parent does not have access unless the student gives a written release, and the student has to advocate for themselves. High school modifications. Remember that we talked about modifications for testing and or grading. Testing's frequent. There's makeup tests a lot. There's extra credit. There's all those things. Teachers will remind you, we've got a test tomorrow. College is a little different. You might have testing is infrequent. You might just have a midterm and then a final, and that final might be cumulative over that whole term, which is going to totally freak out a student. A lot of times, you can make up tests, but you've got to do a lot of communication with your instructor, and they expect you to read the syllabus and know what's coming without a reminder that tomorrow you have a big test or a paper is due. Most community colleges and universities will have like a tutoring center, a place that you can go to get extra help. High school, that's part of it, but at the college level, you have to look for that yourself. This is a huge one, and go back, Terry, on that one. I'm sorry, I kind of jumped around, but probably confused you. This last one, students may study outside of class as little as 0 to 2 hours a week. Sometimes our students aren't the best at studying, or do they know how to study? In college, you are looking at, you need at least 2 to 3 hours outside of class for each hour in class. And that's going to freak them out. It's like, well, I work after school. I do this, I do that. I got to go see my friends. It's like, you need to realize you're going to have to spend a lot of time studying. And it might not just be, that the whole idea of how to study for a test over a whole term could be a very different can of worms for some students that you might need to work with them.
Okay, we are.
Oh, we got a couple of minutes. Go to the next.
Okay, so
Okay, we were going to do that.
VR policy paying for post-secondary education. I have a checklist that I got from Kathy in Harney, Grant County, and they can write an education plan, and there's a lot to it. And I have a copy of this, and I can send it to you, but it's an education plan requires a lot of work by the VRC, the student, and the transition specialist for that VR plan to come into fruition, really. And if you want a kid VR to pay for part of their education, it can only be for tuition. It can't be for living expenses. And expect it to take 6 months, because what the student needs to do and the VRC needs to do to make that education plan is, there's a lot of steps to it. And I will share that with anyone who would like it.
Terry, why don't you just put it on the website for our resources?
I'll put it on the website.
Yeah.
Sounds
We
good.
don't have it. Good. I just quickly want to say, the community college is different. Here's some ideas to get started. As I went through talking about, understanding cost. I mean, my kids, when they went to college, it's like, oh, I want to go here. And it's like, do you know how much that costs? And, they don't even think about it. What is the cost per credit? Fees are skyrocketing. Academic advising, all those things. Financial aid, remember, so you could apply for financial aid for fall of 2021 in October of 2020. So they changed that date, which is great. Be careful about loans, as I said. Financial aid nights are great. Don't assume that the students you work with are going to go to that. It can be very intimidating. I found one-on-one was better. Different things to do. I talked about making a brochure, doing a scavenger hunt, make sure you research the trades, placement tests. A Jeopardy game is great. We've got all those great Jeopardy game things online that is, if you can plug that in because going to college is a vocabulary, right? There's all those different things, vocabulary words. And comparing again the cost for different types of colleges. I put this together. I'll put it on the website. Also, I needed a visual to sit down with a student and go, this is what this looks like. Go to the next one, Terry. And so I would work with the students one-on-one, and in our class, we always had a transition class, and would go through, okay, what does this mean? If you look at the bottom part, that's everything you have to do for community college, and then kind of roll up the other way over to the right and then back to the left is if you're going to get those 90 credits at the community college level and then transfer into a 4-year school. Please don't use this. You've got to do the research yourself on this. This was, I think I last updated this probably 6 or 7 years ago. So please, if you do use that, do your own research on it and make sure you have the right things plugged in there. I think this is huge. With the right preparation, motivation, family support, and continual check-ins with their transition specialists, there will be success. You cannot say, oh, this student's going to go to college, they're at the community college, they're getting a certificate, and go, I'll see them, at the end when they're done. You've got to continue to check in with them each week and really drill down with, how are you doing? So you can find Terry's and my information on the YTP website, and we welcome any classes at all, any questions at all about anything you want to do, how we possibly did it in the classes that we co-taught with our teachers for many years. We both have information that we can get to you, different tricks. All right.
Anybody, any questions? Well, it's a beautiful day out there, you all, and thanks for being here today, and explore your opportunities in your community and have fun. It is fun teaching kids about college. It really is. And whether they go right away or in 3 years, like you live in the community, 3 years later, you run into a student. I had a student I ran into, and she was still in community college 6 years later, but she was getting to the end, So when we say 4-year college, we don't know how long it takes. I know it took me more than 4 years to get through my undergraduate. So just so, we remember that.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Good one.
All right.
Thanks for coming.
Take care. Bye.
Nice work, Mary Jo and Terry. Nice work. Nice work.
Thank you, Sally.